A dating safety app has put users at risk. A Microsoft Cloud vulnerability is tearing through the web. Proton has released their own AI chatbot, and more. Welcome to Surveillance Report 234, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news from the past week. I am Nathan from The New Oil.
And I'm Henry from Techlore.
This week, our sponsor is Ente, the zero-knowledge cross-platform photo management app that has all of the features you would expect from a typical photo management app and then some. They do have the usual things like albums, opt-in geotagging so that you can organize your photos more easily, AI features like facial recognition and natural language search, which is all done on device and must be opted in per device, curated memories, phone widgets, and hidden folders. There are unique features as well, aside from the encryption. There are albums that non-users can add to, which I think personally would be great for something like events. They are fully open source. They even have a blog post about how you can self-host your own instance of Ente. They have duplicate image detection, 3 different backup locations across Europe, and a family plan. We are very grateful to Ente for sponsoring the podcast, and if you would like to learn more about them, you can use our link to let them know that we sent you, which is ente.sh/surveillance report. With that, we will jump into our highlight story. This one is very last minute, so if by the time you're watching this, there is already new information, I apologize, but this is going really viral. So there is an app called T, and it is purported to be a women dating safety app, and it has been breached, exposing user IDs, pretty much a worst case scenario, but user IDs, selfies, all kinds of stuff, and they have been posted to 4chan. So users from 4chan claim to have discovered an exposed database hosted on Google's mobile app development platform Firebase, which belongs to the newly popular women's dating safety app T. Users say they're rifling through people's personal data and selfies uploaded to the app and then posting that data online, according to screenshots, 4chan posts, and code reviewed by 404 Media. The original post includes a photo of 4 women's driver's licenses that the user said they redacted, but the comments in the thread indicate that there were many more photos of users that have been exposed, with one person claiming that they have downloaded thousands. T, which claims to have more than 1.6 million users, reached the top of the App Store charts this week and has tens of thousands of reviews. The app aims to provide a space for women to exchange information about men in order to stay safe, and verifies that new users are women by asking them to upload a selfie. In its terms of use, T says when you first create an account, we ask that you register by creating a username and including your location, birthday, photo, and ID photo. T launched back in 2023, but this week skyrocketed to the top of the Apple App Store. The app lets women anonymously post photos of men along with stories of their alleged experiences with them and ask others for input. It has some similarities to the Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook group that 404 Media has previously covered. In the last hour or so, that page was locked down and now returns a permission denied error. At the time that we're recording, this is a free article from 404. You do have to log in to view it, but other than that, you shouldn't have to pay for it. That's kind of the meat and potatoes. The rest of it is basically, as much as I love 404, it is kind of repeating itself, and it's just talking about the different posts they've seen, the people they've talked to about this. Okay, so first, the obvious elephant in the room. It is so frustrating and ironic that this app has one job, which is to keep women safe from crappy men. And now it is, because of the app itself, it is directly putting women in danger from crappy men. I've been so frustrated today. I don't know if I have the energy in me for a rant, but I honestly don't know how much I can say without going off on a rant and pissing off half of people. Like, it would be nice if we lived in a world where apps like these weren't needed, where men could just behave themselves, but here we are. It's still unfortunate that somebody felt the need to make an app like this in the first place, and it's unfortunate that these women are now put at risk, especially the ones who maybe were genuinely trying to make sure they're not like going on a date with a guy who's secretly married or, serial cheater or something like that. I have to wonder if I'm reading this correctly. This was basically a database that had no password. You could just pull up the IP address and log into it. At what point do these people wake up and say, I see a problem, I can make the world a better place, and I'm not going to put any effort into security? I'm not a developer, but I feel like putting a password on your database is like the bare minimum of making an app secure. And it blows my mind that these people just cannot do the most basic things. And again, I don't know. I think I'm tripping up over the fact that, again, like I said at the start, their whole purpose is to keep women safe from harassment and terrible people. Like, I'm going to make an app whose whole job is not to shoot you in the head. Oh no, there's a bug and now the app shoots people in the head. So this is a really big story right now. Unfortunately, I'm not sure I have a lot of advice here, because First of all, it's already happened. And like, I don't believe in telling people told you so or shoulda. Like, I mean, obviously there is a bit of a postmortem and like, here's what you should do differently. But I mean, in terms of like, if you're someone who is impacted by this and you're watching this video because you're like, oh my God, what do I do about it? I'm not sure you have a lot of options other than maybe like setting your profiles to private, maybe logging off the internet for a little while, just kind of waiting for 4chan to get bored and move on. I don't know that there's much you can do, especially when things like your address have been posted there. Like, you can't just pick up and move. And yes, you could sign up for a data removal service, which we highly recommend. Easy Opt-outs does sponsor the podcast, but you can't make them forget that data. I've actually seen this in another space this week of somebody who believes that their home was broken into, which I don't know if that was true or not, but it's like, okay, if they broke into your home, I can't make them forget where your house is. Like, they've been in your house. I guess, yeah, in the future, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm victim blaming, but in terms of actionable takeaways from this, in the future, be mindful. We've said this before on the podcast. Anything you put in a digital medium, assume that it's public and it's out there. So be mindful when you're uploading photo IDs. Ask them what it actually has to have. Like, for example, a passport card does not have your address. It has your name, your date of birth, but it doesn't have your address. A lot of companies will say, like, you can upload an ID and it's okay if you black out, your name and your address or something. Like, maybe we just want to verify your age or something like that. So kind of ask those questions, see what's optional. Definitely another thing we're a big fan of is not using the same usernames across the internet, because then that makes it easier for people to find you when they can just go to, twitter.com/username and facebook.com/username, and they can find all your profiles that way. We still do recommend data removal services, opting out of search engines like PimEyes that do reverse people search, and they can find all your social media and stuff. Try not to accept DMs or text messages from strangers. If you really are in that severe of a situation, maybe consider changing your phone number or moving. Voice over IP is another good tool to use online to kind of have separate phone numbers for things so it doesn't spill over so much when these kind of things happen. Because I know right now changing my work phone number would suck. I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I feel like I was a little all over the place. Did I miss anything?
Oh, that's a good question. It's difficult, right? Like, situations like this, and this really is what it comes down to. If you have to upload an address to a service and you have to assume the service goes through a data breach, will you feel compelled to have to move in the event that your address is leaked? It's a really important question for people to ask, because if you're, Coinbase recently had a hack where they leaked user addresses. So if you're storing millions of dollars through Coinbase and then your address gets leaked and it's where you live, then that's probably a situation where you're going to say, oh shit, yeah, I should move after this data breach. So maybe I should either be more proactive about this, maybe use a service that doesn't require an address, etc. Like, you have to be a bit more proactive about this kind of stuff. And same thing in a situation like this, when you're using these dating services and stuff like that, you really should be thinking about what you're uploading. I was trying to do a bit of research because this is something I've seen. Some services allow you to upload redacted IDs. Like, you can upload your driver's license, but you don't have to show everything, but it's super ambiguous. Like, you're probably going to get flagged for every service that you upload to. They're going to say, hey, we need the full document. Then you have to go back and forth and see, well, what do you need in the document? So it's not the cleanest solution. This is one of the worst stories for the internet to try to handle because it tugs on every possible string of nuance. Like, there's the nuance of, should women have their own safe space? Are the safety tools on regular platforms good enough for women? Already having to have that discussion. And then there's the discussion of, okay, so are the women on this platform justified on being in this platform? And then it's too many layers of nuance for the internet. And so what I'm seeing a lot of on Twitter over this is just a bunch of butthurt guys posting photos of the women going, ha ha ha, not so funny now, huh? And it's like, well, you're kind of proving why this service existed in the first place, ironically.
That's literally what I was thinking. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. Like, I feel like everyone is just being insanely ironic about the whole situation, regardless of where they stand, because the situation has a lot of nuance. Anyway, I think it's interesting. I'm not a woman, and neither of us have used this app, so I can't really tell you what the culture of this app was really like. But all I can say is that the data breach sucks, and I wouldn't want any platform that anybody's using to have a data breach. And this is one of definitely the worser data breaches that we've come across in terms of like the kind of sensitivity behind it. We're going to go into the data breaches. An adoption agency had a data exposure revealed information about children and parents. This is also inherently sensitive, like the dating breach that we just talked about. It includes deeply personal info about children, birth parents, adoptive parents, other caregivers, about a sensitive topic, which is adoption. So the database included more personally identifiable information like names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and unique identifiers assigned to children's cases. The person who discovered this, Fowler, was ultimately able to trace the database to Gladney because it also contained information about some of the organization's employees. They say that the data appeared to be from a customer relationship management, or a CRM system, that is used to organize client data in businesses and other organizations. This included 1.1 million records and was 2.5 gigabytes. And he said, quote, "I believe that this data was exposed during the move to a different system and that it was up for a few days before I found it," end quote. So if you are in any way related to the Texas-based Gladney Center for Adoption, this is definitely a story for you to look into.
So every time we miss a week, there's always a million stories. So we're going to try to blow through these as quick as we can. Fortunately, this next one's really quick. Major European healthcare network disclosed a security breach. This is AMEOS, which is a Zurich-based healthcare provider that employs 18,000 staff in over 100 hospitals, clinics, rehab centers, and nursing homes located across Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. The investigation is still underway, so basically we don't really have any details at this time. AMEOS has promised to update providers as new information becomes available. So if you have ever used one of their hospitals, we will do our best to keep you updated if we hear more, as always, but definitely contact them, keep an eye on your email or your phone, and hopefully they will have information for you as soon as possible.
Yeah, and then we have a luggage services web bugs that expose the travel plans of every user, including diplomats. So researchers are from a firm called CyberX9, found bugs in the website's called Airporter. I've never heard of this website, but pretty much it allowed them to access all the user's personal information, including their travel plans, or even gain admin privileges that would have allowed a hacker to redirect or steal luggage in transit. Among even the small sample of user data the researchers reviewed and shared with Wired, they found what appeared to be the personal information and travel records of multiple government officials and diplomats from the UK, Switzerland, and the US. The researchers say they could also have used their access to send emails and text messages as Airporter, which is a very bad potential phishing attack. The CEO did confirm this in a written statement, and they disabled the vulnerable part of the backend very shortly after they were made aware of it. CyberX9's researchers, for their part, counter that the simplicity of the vulnerabilities they found mean that there's no guarantee other hackers didn't access Airporter's data first.
I'm actually going to take the next two because they're very similarly related. They both concern fashion brands. So first up, Louis Vuitton says that there were several regional data breaches that were all part of the same cyber attack. They confirmed that there was a data breach impacting the UK, South Korea, and Turkey that all stem from the same incident, which is believed to be linked to the Shiny Hunters extortion group. This impacted first and last name, gender, country, phone numbers, email address, mailing address, date of birth, purchases, and quote-unquote preference data. They confirmed that no payment information was compromised during the incident. The next one is Dior, who is a French luxury brand, and they are also part of LVMH, which is the world's largest luxury conglomerate. They are now sending data breach notifications to US customers. This occurred in 2025. It was discovered in May, and it impacted full names, contact details, physical address, date of birth, passport or government ID numbers in some cases, and in some cases, social security numbers. If you've bought from them recently, keep an eye out.
Next couple stories, a cybercrime forum called LeakZone publicly exposed its users' IP addresses. They exposed a database to the internet without a password, and the exposed database contained more than 22 million records storing the IP address and precise timestamp of when LeakZone users logged in. The records were dated as recently as June 25th, and the database was updating in real time. And in the last data breach, UK retail giant Co-op confirms hackers stole all 6.5 million customer records. This is just official confirmation. We think we've covered this one already on this podcast, but the hackers copied the company's member list of 6.5 million members, but that Co-op shut down its network before the hackers could lock up its systems with the ransomware. The members' data includes names, addresses, and contact information.
Oakley dokley, that'll take us into companies. There is a big vulnerability going around making the news in a software called SharePoint. And this article comes from Ars Technica. It says what to know about ToolShell, the SharePoint threat under mass exploitation. So I'm going to read off part of this article to you guys. And hopefully, if you're not aware of what's going on or you keep hearing about it, this will get you up to speed. So the article says government agencies and private industry have been under siege for the past 4 days following the discovery that a critical vulnerability in SharePoint, the widely used document sharing app made by Microsoft, is under mass exploitation. Since that revelation, the fallout and the ever-increasing scope of the attacks have been hard to keep track of. So SharePoint is a server software that companies use for storing, managing, sharing, and collaborating on internal documents. In 2020, Microsoft said that SharePoint had 200 million users. As of last year, more than 400,000 customer organizations use the software, including roughly 80% of Fortune 500 companies. The vulnerability enables unauthenticated remote code execution on servers running SharePoint. The ease of exploitation, the damage it causes, and the ongoing targeting of it in the wild have earned it a severity rating of 9.8 out of a possible 10. We say this all the time, but for anyone new here, I'm condensing the quotes from the article. The article, I think, does actually go into technical detail if you're a developer or just a really techie person who wants to know more, but I'm keeping it very surface level. So it was first spotted on Saturday by iSecurity, E-I-E. The security firm reported the vulnerability has been actively exploited in 2 waves, starting a day earlier, and had already compromised dozens of systems around the world. iSecurity raised the estimate to 400 compromised systems on Wednesday. Bloomberg reported that the U.S. National Nuclear Security Administration's network was among the casualties. On Tuesday, Microsoft said that it unearthed evidence showing that active exploitation began no later than July 7th, meaning it was exploited as a 0-day before Microsoft and defenders knew of the threat. The vulnerability affects only SharePoint system customers run internally inside their organizations. There is no threat to users of Microsoft's cloud-based SharePoint service. Microsoft said it observed active exploitation for 3 separate groups, all of which are connected to the Chinese government. 2 of the groups were already known. One of them, tracked as Linen Typhoon, performs espionage for scooping up intellectual property. The second is Violet Typhoon, which performs more traditional forms of espionage. And the third group is now being tracked Storm 2603. Microsoft said it knew little about the group other than it had been linked to ransomware attacks in the past. So far, no one has ruled out the possibility that other groups are also exploiting the CVE, possibly from different governments or private crime syndicates. So this was originally discovered at Pwn to Own in Berlin in May. The researchers who discovered it called it ToolShell because they are able to exploit toolpane.aspx, which is a component for assembling the side panel view in the SharePoint user interface. Just in case anyone was curious, you'll see that name pop up from time to time, like in the reporting and stuff. It's 2 vulnerabilities chained together. So Microsoft fixed the vulnerability pair 2 weeks ago as part of the company's monthly update release. As the world learned over the weekend, the patches were incomplete, a lapse that opened organizations around the world to new attacks.
I'll cover the next 2 because the first one is somewhat of a nothing burger so far. Chrome OS is combining with Android, but what does that mean? And let me tell you, listeners, we don't really know what it means because all we have is vague quotes from a guy who still isn't being very clear about what it means. And the most that we have is that it's speculation that Android may take on more desktop-like capabilities, kind of like iPadOS. And my initial response to that is iPadOS is mostly still to this day just blown up iOS with a little bit better multitasking. So I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to be yet, but we'll follow it closely. And when we actually have real information, we'll be sure to cover it on the podcast. And then the next story, I'm also going to try to keep a little bit more brief. The best Bay Area restaurants are vetting your social media before you even walk in. Bay Area meaning in California. For one guest who was visiting Lazy Bear on her birthday for the 3rd straight year, the team found out she was a penguin enthusiast. Wanting to honor this personal yet quirky detail, the restaurant staff went all out. They adopted a real emperor penguin chick for her. Pretty much, they started sending out a questionnaire to each reservation. She then dives into social media, finds any information that they can find publicly about them, and then pretty much tries to personalize the experience as much as possible. There's also a Michelin-starred single-thread restaurant that does this as well as a 2 Michelin-starred, not 3 like the other one, called Aquarello. Their research is a bit more old school. The data collection for them started 36 years ago, and it used to be handwritten in a huge book. We don't rely so much on social media is what they say. And our director of operations is very meticulous about going through each reservation, so they kind of just use a historical data set there.
All right, our next story. Meta investors and Zuckerberg reach a settlement to end $8 billion trial over Facebook privacy violations. So Zuckerberg and the current and former directors and officers at Meta Platforms agreed on Thursday to settle claims seeking $8 billion for damage that they allegedly caused the company by allowing repeated violations of Facebook users' privacy. The parties did not disclose details of the settlement. Billionaire venture capitalist Mark Andreessen was set to testify on Thursday because he was a defendant in the trial and apparently a former Meta director. Shareholders of Meta sued Zuckerberg, Andreessen, and other former company officials, including former chief operating officer Sheryl Sandberg, in hopes of holding them liable for billions of dollars in fines and legal costs the company paid in recent years. The FTC fined Facebook $5 billion in 2019 after finding that it failed to comply with a 2012 agreement with the regulator to protect users' data. The shareholders wanted the 11 defendants to use their personal wealth to reimburse the company. The defendants denied the allegations, which they called extreme claims. Zuckerberg was expected to take the stand on Monday and Sandberg on Wednesday. The trial was scheduled to run through the end of next week, which I think is this week, actually. The case was also expected to include testimony from former Facebook board members Peter Thiel, and Reed Hastings, who is the co-founder of Netflix. The settlement allows plaintiffs to avoid a very difficult case. Investors allege that the former and current board members completely failed to oversee the company's compliance in 2012 after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, basically, which is a now defunct political consulting firm.
And then the last company news, 23andMe's data sold to nonprofit run by its co-founder. So some context here, 23andMe's like, oh yeah, we're going to sell our data to someone. Who's it going to be? And then, each week we covered a different person who was likely to buy it. And then they're like, oh, okay, actually our co-founder is going to buy it from itself. And now the data's been sold to a nonprofit run by its co-founder. You know what? If you're more interested in this, then go ahead and read it.
I think the one thing we should throw in there is basically the privacy policy is not any better than 23andMe's was originally. So that's kind of the concern there. This next one is our first research story. Humans can be tracked with a unique fingerprint based on how their bodies block Wi-Fi signals. So researchers in Italy have developed a way to create a biometric identifier for people based on the way the human body interferes with Wi-Fi signal propagation. The scientists claim this identifier, a pattern derived from Wi-Fi channel state information, or CSI, can re-identify a person in other locations most of the time when a Wi-Fi signal can be measured. Observers could therefore track a person as they pass through signals sent by different Wi-Fi networks, even if they're not carrying a phone. The core insight is that a Wi-Fi signal propagates through an environment. Its waveform is altered by the presence and physical characteristics of objects and people along its path. These alterations, captured in the form of CSI, contain rich biometric information. In the context of Wi-Fi, CSI refers to information about the amplitude and phase of the electromagnetic transmissions, and therefore these measurements interact with the human body in a way that results in person-specific distortions. When processed by a deep neural network, the result is a unique data signature.
This is an update to another story that I'm also pretty tired of talking about, which is CrowdStrike, which we actually haven't talked about in a while, so we can get a little more into it. And this is pretty much just, I would say this is more of a recap of something that's already happened. So it's people analyzing the situation, and hopefully we can learn a little bit more about it. The headline is at least 750 US hospitals faced disruptions during last year's CrowdStrike outage. Now, for those who don't remember, CrowdStrike was what happened when there was an update that was pushed on Microsoft Windows operating systems that essentially caused them to brick. It also caused yours truly to have to be on a delayed flight and stuck in Detroit, this whole thing. Thank you, Delta. Now, by scanning internet-exposed parts of hospital networks before, during, and after the crisis, they detected that at minimum 759 hospitals in the US appear to have experienced network disruption of some kind on that day. They found that more than 200 of those hospitals seem to have been hit specifically with outages that directly affected patients. Some researchers are pretty much saying this could have caused significant public health concerns. What is interesting is this came from a UCSD study, and CrowdStrike criticized the study and their decision to publish it, calling the paper junk science. They note that the researchers didn't verify that the disrupted networks ran Windows or CrowdStrike software, and point out that Microsoft's cloud service Azure experienced a major outage on the same day, which may have been responsible for some of the hospital network disruptions. The researchers stand by their findings, and the outage that CrowdStrike noted, they pointed out, began the previous night and affected mostly the central US, while the outages they measured began at roughly midnight US East Coast. So they were pretty much trying to clarify between the Azure versus CrowdStrike issues. Some other cool stuff from the study, they tried to roughly measure the length of downtime of the hospital services affected by the outage, and they found that most recovered relatively quickly. About 58% of the hospital services were back online within 6 hours, and only 8% or so took more than 48 hours to recover.
I'm actually glad you mentioned Delta again, because I do have one thing to add. CrowdStrike is the cybersecurity company that makes a third-party tool. Just to clarify, because the way you worded it earlier, people might get the wrong impression. The name of the incident is not CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is the company. They pushed an update that did not play nice with Microsoft, bricked everything. Yeah, super cool. But on the topic of Delta, I should have put this in the company section, and I didn't. Delta plans to use AI in ticket pricing, draws fire from US lawmakers. But basically, to kind of give you a recap, Delta is going to start using AI to predict, quote, the amount people are willing to pay for the premium products related to the base fares, unquote. Delta added that dynamic pricing has been used for more than 3 decades, in which price fluctuates based on a variety of factors like overall customer demand, but not a specific customer's personal information. Delta said AI technology for dynamic prices is being tested to eliminate the manual processes while accelerating analysis and adjustments. I just picked a part of the article and started reading. Basically, this has been a thing for a while. Look up surveillance pricing. It almost started to become a mainstream issue like a year or two ago, and then people moved on. This has been a thing for a long time. Delta's starting to dip their toes in it. They're starting to add AI to the process. It's unclear if they're going to use user data and they're going to personalize this. And on that note, we're now going to go into politics, but I'm going to start off with good news. The UK is backing down on Apple's encryption backdoor after pressure from the US. So Keir Starmer's government is seeking a way out of a clash with the Trump administration over the UK's demand that Apple provide it with access to secure custom data. And this comes from two senior British officials who spoke to the Financial Times. Both officials said the UK decision to force Apple to break its end-to-end encryption, which has been raised multiple times by top officials in the US administration, could impede technology agreements with the US. In the meantime, the Home Office continues to pursue its case with Apple at the tribunal. Its lawyers discussed the next legal steps this month, reflecting the divisions within government over how best to proceed. At this point, the government has not backed down, said one person familiar with the process.
To stay in the UK, they are going to ban public sector organizations from paying ransomware gangs. So, some context, one of the things that's, overall considered a good thing to help prevent ransomware is to actually ban people from paying ransomware gangs when they're attacked, because then it prevents people from actually doing these in the first place because people are less likely to pay them and all that stuff. So the UK has decided to plan to ban public sector and critical infrastructure organizations from paying ransoms after ransomware attacks. This includes local councils, schools, and the publicly funded National Health Service. The ban itself will require people to notify the government if they intend to make a ransom payment, seeking guidance on whether such payments could violate laws regarding transfers to sanctioned cybercriminal groups, many of them based in Russia. A mandatory reporting system is also being developed to provide law enforcement with essential information to track down attackers and support the victims.
I'm going to combine the next few because they're all closely related. The main one says Reddit's UK users must now prove they're 18 to view adult content. Reddit announced today, and this is almost a week ago, I think, Reddit announced today that it has started verifying UK users' ages before letting them view certain mature content in order to comply with the country's Online Safety Act. Reddit said it contracted with the company Persona, which, quote, performs the verification on either an uploaded selfie or a photo of your government ID. Reddit will not have access to the uploaded photo, and Reddit will only store your verification status along with the birth date you provided, so you won't have to re-enter it each time you access restricted content. Unquote. Reddit said that Persona made promises about protecting the privacy of the data. Persona promises not to retain the photo for longer than 7 days and will not have access to your Reddit data, such as the subreddits you visit. Your birthday is never visible to other users or advertisers and is used to support safety features and age-appropriate experiences on Reddit. Reddit provided more detail on how the age verification works in a post and a list of what content is restricted. For UK users under 18, Reddit says that it has to restrict sexually explicit content, content that promotes suicide, deliberate self-injury, and eating disorders, content that incites abuse or hatred against people based on protected characteristics, bullying content, content that promotes violence or depicts real or serious violence against a person, an animal, or a fictional creature, content that promotes challenges or stunts that are likely to cause serious injuries, content that encourages people to use harmful substances or substances and harmful qualities, content that shames people based on body type or physical features, and content that promotes or romanticizes depression, hopelessness, and despair. Proton tweeted, quote, just a few minutes after the Online Safety Act went into effect last night, Proton VPN signups originating in the UK surged by more than 1,400%. And then a related story, I believe this came from Reuters, said that 5 EU states to test age verification app to protect children. And that's France, Spain, Italy, Denmark, and Greece will test a blueprint for an age verification app to protect children online. The setup is built on the same technological specifications as the European Digital Identity Wallet, which will be rolled out next year. The 5 countries can customize the model according to the requirements, integrate into a national app, or keep it separate.
Okay, so the UK has launched a vulnerability research program for external experts, and this is from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre. They announced this to strengthen relations with external cybersecurity experts, and the agency already conducts internal vulnerability research on a wide range of technologies and will continue to do so. And this will create a parallel program designed to improve discovery and sharing of critical insights with the community more expeditiously. If you're interested in joining us and learning more, you can always check out the show notes. And also there is an email that you can reach out to, which is vri@ncsc.gov.uk with your skills and focus area. And maybe there are some people on this podcast who actually might be able to contribute to this. So if you're in the UK and you're a cybersecurity expert and you want to maybe be a part of something, then go ahead and check that out.
Now we're going to the US. First up, we have inside ICE's supercharged facial recognition app of 200 million images. 404 Media is talking about how ICE officers are able to point their smartphone's camera at a person and near instantaneously run their face against a bank of 200 million images, pulling up their name, date of birth, nationality, unique identifiers such as their alien number, and whether an immigration judge has determined they should be deported from the country. The app represents an unprecedented linking of government databases into a single tool, including from the State Department, Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, the FBI, and state records. It also includes the potential for ICE to later add commercially available databases that contain even more personal information on people inside the US. This is quoting David Moss from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. This app shows that biometric technology has moved well beyond just confirming someone's identity. In the hands of ICE officers, it's becoming a way to retrieve vast amounts of data about a person on demand just by pointing a camera at their face. The more they streamline its use, the more they streamline its abuse. When an officer says paper please, you could choose to say nothing and face the consequences. With facial recognition, your options are diminished. End quote. Beyond facial recognition, it has a feature that allows ICE officers to use a smartphone camera to scan and save a person's fingerprints with a feature it calls contactless fingerprints. It says the app allows officers to run remote identity checks in the field by capturing contactless fingerprints and facial images using their ICE-issued iPhones. The material indicates that Mobile Fortify may soon include data from commercial providers. One section says that currently LexisNexis is not supported in the application. So that's kind of suggesting that they would like to add it.
So there's funding for a program to stop the next Stuxnet from hitting US, which expired on Sunday. This government funding hunts for threats on Americans' critical infrastructure, and it expired Sunday, so they no longer are getting funding. This prevents the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory from analyzing activity that could indicate a cyber attack. Specifically, the program is called Cybersecurity Program, and it's a public-private partnership managed by CISA. It includes critical infrastructure and actually includes threats along the lines of China's Volt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon intrusions, which we talked about. There's a lot more information in the show notes, but the long story short is that they shut down this program, and the CEO, Robert Lee, testified, "Let me be blunt, we are not prepared for a major attack on our critical infrastructure. We are not doing enough to prepare, and the results could be catastrophic, including loss of life." Neither DHS nor CISA immediately responded about the funding and if it would be renewed, and they will update the story when they receive responses. The article shares one success story from 2022 as a result of the program. If this whole funding fiasco sounds familiar, it should, and this is from the article. It echoes what happened with the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, the CVE program, earlier this year. In April, the US government discontinued funding for MITRE to operate the CVE program before making a very last-minute U-turn and promising another 11 months of cash.
This last one comes from Russia. It says the new Russian law criminalizes online searches for controversial content. The new measures, which sailed through the Russian parliament and will take effect in September, envision finding people who deliberately search for knowingly extremist materials and gained access to them through means such as VPNs. Russia defines extremist materials as content officially added by a court to a government-maintained registry, which is a running list of about 5,500 entries or content produced by extremist organizations ranging from the LGBT movement to Al-Qaeda. The new law covers materials that promote alleged Nazi ideology or incite extremist actions. Until now, Russian law stopped short of punishing individuals for seeking information online. Only creating or sharing such content is prohibited. The new amendments follow remarks by high-ranking officials that censorship is justified in wartime. Adoption of the measures would mark a significant tightening of Russia's already restrictive digital laws. The fine for searching for banned content in Russia would be about $65, while the penalty for advertising circumvention tools such as VPNs would be about $2,500 for individuals and up to $12,800 for companies. This is a quote from an internet freedom activist. They say, the fines for searching for extremist materials in this iteration may be minor, but this can be grounds for detention, pressure, a pretext to be escorted to the police station. I am most afraid that in the next iteration, administrative fines will be turned into criminal cases. The new amendment was introduced Tuesday and attached to a mundane bill on regulating freight companies. Lawmakers have repeatedly used this cunning tactic of quietly inserting repressive measures into dormant, previously introduced bills. It allows them to accelerate the legislative process, moving through a second and third reading in a single day and to avoid public scrutiny. That comes from Net Freedoms, an advocacy group. One of the senators and one of the bill's authors told state-controlled news agencies that the new measures are not intended to punish individuals for accessing prohibited websites using VPNs. They said that reading Facebook or scrolling through Instagram does not constitute an administrative offense. The main focus is on regulating providers. There is no plan for mass punishment of users. Russian internet activists have warned that the vague language of the amendment creates significant potential for misuse. It also remains unclear how regulators intend to monitor search queries or enforce the new rules. NetFreedom said that telecom operators and Russian platforms such as VK, which are already obligated to store and share user data with law enforcement, could be asked to turn over such information. User search activity can also be exposed through unprotected public Wi-Fi networks, search engine histories, or data stored on devices, such as browser logs and autofill entries.
All right, and now we're going to go into the open source news, FOSS. And we're going to start with a spicy one, maybe. Introducing Lumo, the AI where every conversation is confidential. So this is from Proton. They said, quote, "We believe the benefits of AI are too great to miss and the risks too serious to ignore. Whether we like it or not, AI is here to stay, but the current iterations of AI reflect a failure to learn from the past. That's why we built Lumo, the private AI assistant that only works for you, not the other way around, with no logs kept and every chat encrypted. It keeps your conversations confidential and your data fully under your control. Never shared, sold, or stolen." You can try out Lumo for free. You don't even need an account. You can do this at lumo.proton.me. That's lumo.proton.me. You can also download an app. In addition to no logs and zero knowledge encryption, they promise Lumo has no data sharing. It's not used to train AI, and it uses open source language models based in Proton's European data centers. It's not merely a proxy like DuckDuckGo or Brave. Other features are ghost mode, which is like incognito mode, so it just wipes the chat when you're done. You can toggle on web search. You can do file uploads, and that literally is just PDFs as far as I was able to test. It doesn't even support images. It doesn't support videos.
.text files.
It doesn't support Proton docs. And I guess, yes, Nate said .texts and also .pdf. But actually, there was a second story attached to this, which is super interesting because it's a pretty massive announcement. I think we covered on this podcast how Switzerland has been getting a little bit less friendly towards privacy and security, and services like Proton are very proudly Swiss. But this is a quote from the blog. Because of legal uncertainty around Swiss government proposals to introduce mass surveillance, proposals that have been outlawed in the EU, Proton is moving most of its physical infrastructure out of Switzerland. Lumo will be the first product to move. So Lumo is actually hosted on European servers in the EU. So it seems like Proton is actually loosely committed to move over a lot of their services to European data centers in the EU for the next 5 or 6 years. So this is a very massive shift for Proton.
Our next one is good news. Brave blocks Microsoft recall by default. So this is a blog post from Brave, and I'm going to quote selected pieces here. We will disable it by default for Windows 11 users with a toggle to turn it back on for users who really want recall. How we implemented this. Microsoft has said that the private browsing window on browsers will not be saved as snapshots. We've extended that logic to apply to all Brave browser windows. We tell the operating system that every Brave tab is private, so recall never captures it. For more technical details, see the GitHub issue for this feature, and that is a link to the issue. And the toggle is both in the settings or the flags. So either way that you want to turn it on, if for some reason you want to disable it, you can do that in the GUI settings, or you can use the flags if you're more comfortable with that. Okay, if you're like me and every time I go to take a screenshot, if I have Signal open on a screen, it just instantly disappears. And that's fine because I'm not trying to take a picture of Signal, but I do screenshot Brave all the time. So if you're like me and you're like, crap, that will actually not be a thing because the way that they did it. So that's good news. I wanted to go ahead and read this last paragraph because I kind of liked it. It says, we were partly inspired by Signal's blocking of recall. Given that Windows doesn't let non-browser apps granularly disable recall, Signal cleverly uses the DRM flag on their app to disable all screenshots. This breaks recall, but unfortunately also breaks the ability to take any screenshots, including by legitimately accessible software such as screen readers. Brave's approach does not have this limitation. Since we're able to granularly disable just recall, regular screenshotting will still work. While it's heartening that Microsoft recognizes that web browsers are especially privacy-sensitive applications, we hope they offer the same granular ability to turn off recall to all privacy-minded application developers.
Next one is pretty exciting. Linux has broken 5% desktop market share in the US, 5.03% to be specific. The article credits the growth to a few reasons, which is Windows sucking, the Steam Deck, and Linux getting better, especially in terms of user-friendliness and risks of privacy concerns and lengthening older hardware. One thing I really liked about this, they put the journey of Linux in a really interesting light that I haven't seen before. They claim that it's accelerating because it took 8 years to go from 1 to 2%, and then it took 2.2 years to reach 3%, and then just 0.7 years to hit 4%. Now we're at 5% in the US, so the exponential growth suggests that we're on a promising upward trend. If that continues, then perhaps we might hit 99% in a few years.
Our next story comes from IVPN, who has launched MailX in beta, which is an audited open source email aliasing service. So the following features are available in MailX beta. You can create and manage email aliases. You can use one or more recipients for forwarded emails. You can instantly create new aliases on the fly with wildcard aliases. You can protect content with PGP encryption, and you can review email forwarding statistics. Planned in Q3 and Q4 of this year are additional domains available for aliases, optional logs for delivery issues, custom domain options, and bulk import and export of aliases. MailX is fully open source. Anyone can inspect the code. There's a clear privacy policy. They did a proactive security audit from Cure 53. The results are available in the article. And just to give you a quick summary, they conducted the audit over 8 days in May of this year. They found a total of 6 vulnerabilities, 1 critical, 3 high, 1 medium, and 1 low, and 1 general informational level issue. All vulnerabilities have been remediated before the beta release. It is available for IVPN Pro customers with at least 1 year remaining on their account. So you have to sign up for at least a year of IVPN Pro. When you sign up, a temporary sign-up link is generated within the database. Once the MailX sign-up is completed, the link and corresponding identifiers are removed from the database to prevent any association between MailX and IVPN accounts. I emailed them to ask a couple of questions. My main question was, can you start a new email? Because I see that a lot with a lot of like AdGuard, DuckDuckGo, Firefox. They have those email aliasing services, but you can only reply. You can't initiate an email. They told me you can with MailX. That's already available. It says that like there's no correlation between the accounts, but you can manage them from your dashboard. When you log into IVPN, there's a little tab you click on, it takes you to MailX.
Well, the last open source story, it also kind of comes from IVPN. Kind of a while ago, Portmaster was, if you guys missed this or don't remember it, Portmaster used to be an open source firewall tool. It still is. Safing, who's the people who developed it, were essentially acquired by IVPN. And so pretty much IVPN took on the development for Portmaster. So Portmaster v2 has arrived. It doesn't introduce anything super flashy, but it brings foundational improvements that pave the way for the future, essentially. The core changes do require a fresh install, as they couldn't be delivered via an auto update. So if you are a Portmaster user, make sure you are at some point manually going to get v2. So the key improvements are offline installers, streamlined updates, better Linux support, particularly for immutable distros, smarter DNS monitoring, and modern database engines. What's next is deeper IVPN integration, which I'm really excited to see, and there's going to be a community survey in August, so keep an eye out for that. Portmaster v1 will remain available and supported for at least 6 more months, so there's still going to be a lot of time for you to try out v2, and this is going to give you a lot of leeway for that update.
They did say that it is possible to roll back to v1 if you run into any bugs or you're unhappy or whatever, so
definitely go check that out.
that is all of our FOSS. We will now move into Misfits. We have a handful this week. The first one comes from a listener, so thank you. This says, bill tracking, increasing cache tracking worries data protectionists. So this comes from Germany, and it says the netzpolitik.org portal has shed light on the comparatively recent phenomenon of the increasing tracking of banknotes in a series of articles. The team also followed the life of a 20-euro banknote from printing to shredding and recorded where serial numbers are already being automatically recorded. According to the DPO for Schleswig-Holstein, who is Hansen, such comprehensive cache tracking, which police authorities in Bavaria and Thuringia already used to track down money laundering or terrorist financing in particular, not only poses risks for individuals. According to the inspector, it also looks bad for business secrets and possibly even for internal security, such as information about security-relevant people that can be used by the intelligence services could be obtained. Hansen draws a comparison with printer IDs. Such yellow dots are also technical data that could be used to identify whistleblowers. She believes it is crucial that people have a truly anonymous payment option. After all, payment traces could reveal personal or intimate details such as diet, addictions, or love affairs. The Bundesbank itself points out that the protection of privacy is an important advantage of cash for many people. It emphasizes the right of people in Germany to informational self-determination. Although the bank itself tracks the path of certain banknotes on certain occasions, it decided against comprehensive processing of serial numbers in 2020. However, to accommodate investigators, it tested this option beforehand. The managing director of Elephant and Castle IP wants to take official cash tracking in Germany to a new level. His company receives banknote serial numbers with the time and place of capture from Cash in Transit Company and offers security authorities expert opinions based on this database. He claims that this is factual data that is not subject to data protection as no personal information is collected. The chairman of Police Unions and Customs is also calling for comprehensive cash tracking and the merging of data from banks and cash and transit services for police and customs authorities. He wants to uncover contradictions in statements and, for example, track whether cash originates from crimes such as ATM break-ins. The expert would like to see laws on cash tracking and a private sector serial number database that can be accessed online by various authorities. Data protection is currently an important argument for the use of cash for over 80% of Germans. More than half of all payments in Germany are still made with coins and bills, but card payments, which are usually easier to track, are on the rise.
Chinese authorities are using a new tool to hack seized phones and extract data. Security researchers are saying Chinese authorities are using this new type of malware to extract data from seized phones, allowing them to obtain text messages, including from chat apps like Signal, images, location histories, audio recordings, contacts, and more. They use a software called Assistant, and it's for forensic extraction, very similar to some of the services we've talked about, I guess, in the West. They found several posts on local Chinese forums where people complained about finding the malware installed on their devices after interactions with the police. The malware must be planted on an unlocked device and works in tandem with a hardware tower connected to a desktop computer. They couldn't analyze the desktop component, nor could the researchers find a version of the malware compatible with Apple devices. In an illustration on its website, it shows iPhones connected to its forensic hardware device, suggesting the company may have an iOS version designed to extract data from Apple devices, but police do not need sophisticated techniques to use it, such as using 0 days. The good news is that this leaves evidence of the compromise on the seized device, so you can actually identify and delete the malware, either because the hacking tool literally appears as an app on your phone, or it can be found and deleted using more sophisticated tools like the Android Debug Bridge, or ADB is what you guys probably know that as. The bad news is that at the time of installing, the damage is done and authorities already have the person's data. It's worth knowing that there are other tools like this that have existed and still exist. Assistant is only one of a large number of spyware or malware made by Chinese surveillance tech makers in what they're calling a big ecosystem. The researchers said that the company tracks at least 15 different malware families in China, and there's a bit more information you can read in the show notes, but sadly there aren't super technical details as to like which devices this works on, if there's limitations, does it require the device to be unlocked. All these things are really hard to kind of figure out based on just what we hear from this story.
So this next story is just, yeah. It comes from 404. The headline says, a startup is selling data hacked from people's computers to debt collectors. So quoting the article, when your laptop is infected with info-stealing malware, it's not just hackers that might get your passwords, billing and email addresses, and a list of sites or services you've created accounts on, potentially including some embarrassing ones. A private intelligence company run by a young founder is now taking that hacked data from what it says are more than 50 million computers and reselling it for profit to a wide range of different industries, including debt collectors, couples in divorce proceedings, and even companies looking to poach their rivals' customers. Multiple experts 404 Media spoke to called the practice deeply unethical, and in some cases, the use of the data is probably illegal. The company is also selling access to a subset of the data to anyone for as little as $50, and 404 Media used it to uncover unsuspecting victims' addresses. The activities of the company, called Farnsworth Intelligence, shows a dramatic shift in the bevy of companies that collect and sell access to so-called open source intelligence, or OSINT. Historically, OSINT has included things like public social media profiles or flight data. Now companies increasingly see data extracted from people's personal or corporate machines and then posted online as fair game, not just to use in their own investigations, but to repackage and sell. This should also be an example of how once your data is lost in a breach, you can't control what will happen to it. It can be used by law enforcement, stalkers, scammers, advertisers, or anyone with access to it. It's a stark reminder of why digital security is important, even if you might think you have nothing to hide. And that comes from the EFF.
This next one's pretty interesting. So phishers have found a way to downgrade, but not bypass FIDO multi-factor authentication. So FIDO being fast identity online, it's the standard that your YubiKeys are using, as well as passkeys. If true, the attack reported in a blog post Thursday by security firm Expel would be huge, since FIDO is widely regarded as being immune to credential phishing attacks. After analyzing the Expel write-up, I'm confident that the attack doesn't bypass FIDO protections, at least not in the sense that the word bypass is commonly used in security circles. Rather, the attack downgrades the MFA process to a weaker, non-FIDO-based process. As such, the attack is better described as a FIDO downgrade attack. Expel said the novel attack technique begins with an email that links to a fake login page from Okta, which is an authentication provider. It prompts visitors to enter their valid username and password. The FIDO spec was designed to mitigate precisely these sorts of scenarios by requiring users to provide an additional factor of authentication in the form of a security key. Now, in the event there is no passkey on the device being used to log in, a user can use a passkey for that site that's already resident on a different device, which in most cases will be a phone. In these cases, the site being logged into will display a QR code. The user then scans the QR code with the phone, and the normal FIDO MFA process proceeds as normal. So, too long didn't read. The attackers become a man in the middle and trick the fake site into displaying the backup QR code instead of the more secure FIDO code. What Expel seems to have encountered is an attack that downgraded FIDO MFA with some weaker MFA form. Very likely, this weaker authentication was similar to those used to log into a Netflix or YouTube account on a TV with a phone, and assuming this was the case, the person who administered the organization's Okta login page would have had to deliberately choose to allow this fallback to a weaker form of MFA. As such, the attack is more accurately classified as a FIDO downgrade attack, not a bypass.
Our next story, hackers fooled Cognizant help desk, says Clorox in $380 million cyber attack lawsuit. So according to the complaint, from 2013 to 2023, Cognizant was contracted by Clorox to handle its IT operations. Cognizant provided the service desk that Clorox employees could contact when they needed password recovery or reset assistance. Cognizant's operation of the service desk came with a simple common sense requirement. Never reset anyone's, this is actually the complaint that they're quoting for the record. Simple common sense requirement, never reset anyone's credentials without properly authenticating them first. Clorox made this easy for Cognizant by providing them with straightforward procedures to follow whenever providing credential recovery or reset assistance. However, the complaint alleges that on August 11th, 2023, recordings show that a cybercriminal called Cognizant service desk multiple times, pretending to be a Clorox representative requesting password and multi-factor authentication resets. At no point during any of the calls did the agent verify that the caller was in fact employee 1. At no point did the agent follow Clorox's credential support procedures, either the pre-2023 procedure or the January 2023 update, before changing the password for the cybercriminal. The agent further reset employee 1's MFA credentials multiple times without any identity verification at all. And at no point did the agent send the required emails to the employee or the employee's manager to alert them of the password reset, according to Clorox. After allegedly failing to verify the caller's identity, Cognizant reset the credentials and multi-factor for the hacker, granting them access to Clorox's IT network. To make matters worse, Clorox alleges that the threat actors used the same playbook to reset the password and MFA for another employee who worked in IT security, which was done without verification once again. This reportedly gave the attackers privileged access to the network, which they used to spread to further devices. Quick note, in the article, they actually have like screenshots of the chat logs. And I mean, it's just a section, but assuming that that's the full section, like, they're not wrong. It's literally this person calls in like, hey, I need a reset. And they're like, yeah, no problem. I can do that for you. Okay, here's the new password. And it told them to them over the phone. Like, yeah, it's pretty wild they got away with this. In addition to this, Clorox described Cognizant's response and recovery support as overly incompetent, resulting in delays in the application of containment measures, failure to shut down compromised accounts, and sending underqualified personnel on premise. And I'll go ahead and take the last story because it's literally like a headline. It says, hacker sneaks info stealer malware into early access Steam game. And this was just a quick reminder to be cautious. I feel like we've covered, I want to say 3 Steam stories in the last couple of months, but it may even be more than that. So, okay. And that is it for the last 2 weeks, which I think we forgot to say up front. And we missed a week. It's been a long couple of weeks. A dating safety app has put users at horrible risk. Very nuanced story. A Microsoft Cloud vulnerability that is probably still tearing through the web. I feel sorry for any of you that work in IT. And Proton has released their AI chatbot. Check it out if you want. It's free. And much more. And now, Henry will tell you all about our sponsor, Ente.
Yes, so Ente, the way I've been presenting it to people is that it's Google Photos, but they can't see your photos. And it's also a way to essentially get end-to-end encryption without giving up much of the usability and the features that even normies would expect. So it's a really good service to push people you know to. So you'll get albums, geotagging, AI features like facial recognition and natural language search, which is all on device, and you have to opt in to use it. Or you can ignore all those features if you prefer no AI stuff. Curated memories, phone widgets, and even hidden folders. What's even better is like a really good way to use Ente in your life is that you can essentially have your own folder and you can have it so that people can drop their own photos and stuff like that into your folder, even if they don't have an account. So even if your friends and family don't use Ente, it's still pretty interoperable with other people, which not every service makes it that simple. So it's something really awesome. And you can even self-host it yourself. Their blog post shows how you can do it with just a single command. So it's pretty awesome. They actually also have a free tier. So if you don't know if you'd like it or not, you get 10 gigs for free. And it's all open source, and you can get it on pretty much every major operating system out there, including on Linux. So check them out down in the description, or you can go to ente.sh/surveillance report, and we want to give them a massive thank you for supporting our podcast. And it's a perfect overlap with all of you listening, and it's actually the service I recommend to my friends and family.
That is all the stories this week. Thank you so much for listening to Surveillance Report. Links to all the stories can be found in the show notes. As always, if you have a story that you think we should cover, please send it to news@surveillancereport.tech. A couple of the stories this week did actually come from you guys, so thank you for doing that. The final thing we want to ask, please share the podcast around. Make sure you are subscribed. Give us a rating if you're listening from a platform where that's an option. We're trying to reach as many people as possible with privacy information, and you can help us do that. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.